Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show this Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. Thank you for tuning in. I'm glad to have you guys here. Now, the world is sleepwalking toward a escalation of the war going on over between Russia and Ukraine. The world is sleepwalking toward a nuclear war. And the group of 7 countries have announced security assurances to Ukraine to deter future Russian attacks and a move decried by Moscow. In other words, Moscow's mad about it. They're saying it's very dangerous, Russia says. They're slamming the G7 security assurances to Ukraine. It says Russia has warned Western powers against providing security assurances to Ukraine, casting this as a dangerous mistake that would affect Moscow and expose Europe to greater risks for years ahead. The group of 7 countries, the G7, announced on Wednesday an international framework that paves the way for long-term security assurances for Ukraine to boost its defenses against Russian and deter Moscow from future aggression. In a joint declaration, the United States, Germany, Japan, France, Italy, Canada, and Britain, as well as European Union, said the measures encompass elements that included modern advanced military equipment, training, intelligence sharing, and cyber defense, which is a lot of the things they're already doing. The Kremlin said, "We consider this move to be badly mistaken and potentially very dangerous. By providing any kind of security guarantees for the Ukraine, these countries would be ignoring the international principle of indivisibility of security. By providing guarantees to Ukraine that they would be impinging upon the security of the Russian Federation." So this is heating things up. At the same time, they've said about NATO. NATO said that Ukraine, maybe they'll join up with NATO if the war comes to an end. Well, that would be a big incentive for Russia to keep the war going, because this has been a point of contention. One of the big points of contention, and NATO's been offering Ukraine a faster path toward membership. Critics are saying that the plan's too vague. It says NATO leaders opened the door a bit wider for Ukraine on Tuesday by offering it an accelerated path toward membership and continued support while it's at war with Russia. So you know what I've been seeing in this situation? Well, they've been fighting over Bakhmut so long, the Russians and Ukrainians, that I've learned how to pronounce Bakhmut. And I can't pronounce any of those cities. At the time I've learned to pronounce it, that's how long they've been fighting over that one city. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in Ukraine. The front line moves back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Well, for these people out there who say, okay, this side's winning, or okay, that side's winning, I observe what I see. And what I see is that they've been fighting over the same little piece of ground now for months and months and months and months. But in my mind also, at the same time, I realize that sooner or later, one side or the other is going to start to advance. This is what happens in war. This isn't the first time that wars got bogged down in one little area and they fight over one hill. First one side up the hill and then the other side back down the hill until they soak the hill with blood. This isn't the first time that this has happened in history. But in the end, one side starts to be what they call victorious in the end. One side or the other. And we're going to have to wait to see which side, but for right now, they're just fighting in that one, more or less, the heated battles are occurring on and not advancing in a big way. So, in other words, stalemate, sort of. Or what do they call that? A war of attrition or whatever. But it's slowly leading to something. Because when one side or the other starts to push through, which will eventually happen, and there's no sign of this war is going to come to an end in any other way come to an end at the negotiation table. There's no sign of that happening. This is just going to be continuing and continuing until one side starts to advance. When that time comes, we're in great danger of an escalation, because neither side can afford to lose this, I should say. Russia can't afford to lose it. NATO can't afford to lose it. And so, well, let's talk about nuclear war for a minute, I know you guys have all heard, okay, that there's an all-out nuclear war, everyone's toast, and the survivors might as well be dead too, because it would just ruin everything so bad that nobody would survive and it'd be a nuclear winter, and everybody'd starve to death, and everybody full of radiation, and the whole thing, the world's over if that comes to that. Well, we've been growing up and taught that doctrine. That's world's end. If there's a nuclear war, or an all-out nuclear war, it's at the end of the world, and that's it. You might as well die, because you'd be better off dead. That's the way we've been taught. But that's not necessarily true. Back during the Cold War, they had far more nuclear weapons than they have now. They've got rid of an awful lot of them. And then there's another factor to consider. When they first built those nuclear weapons and stuff, they built especially concerning the Soviet Union, and what's now become Russia, but was formerly the Soviet Union. When they first built those weapons, they're brand new, just like anything is brand new. Like if they build a brand new car, okay, picture you get a brand new car built. It's going to run pretty good. It's going to work good. But say you took that car and you put it in the garage for 30 years. Just parked it for 30 years inside the garage. And then suddenly you were required to drive to town with that car. So you get behind the wheel and you say, okay, the car's never been used. It was brand new. It's sitting here for 30 years in the garage. Let's start it up and drive to town. So you go to start it up and stuff, and you find there's a myriad of problems. The thing won't even start. The tires are flat, first off. The rubbers all went rotted on the tires for over 30 years sitting in the garage. The fuel in the two fuel tanks turned to jelly over 30 years. Everything's wrong with it. Well, this is the way with these nuclear weapons. They build them brand new, and they sit them down into their bunker or wherever they're going to sit them, station them. And then time passes. This would be specifically true for probably some of the weapons that are still in the arsenal of from the former Soviet Union. How many of those 6,000 weapons that Russia's got are old ones? More than say 5 years old. It might be more than you think. This is the point I'm getting to right now. Now, NATO, I think, is kept up better. I think they dismantled their old nuclear weapons and used them to make new ones, and they keep up better. But they haven't went through the financial situation that the former Soviet Union, when they collapsed, and Russia was born over there and became Russia instead of the former Soviet Union. How good have they kept up with maintenance on their older weapons? And are they still counting those older weapons? This is something you got to factor into consideration. As the second thing you got to factor into consideration is what kind of missile defense systems has the West has the biggest military budget of all, by far. What kind of defense systems do they put in against these nuclear weapons? How many of the Russian nuclear weapons would blow up on the launch pad before they'd even get them into the air? And the few that they get into the air, how many of them would get knocked down by missile defense systems? The numbers might be bigger than what you think. But still, when you're talking about thousands of nuclear weapons that Russia has, some of them would obviously get through, more than likely. And they're devastatingly powerful. So all I'm saying, guys, is I've heard this whole thing about nuclear winter and stuff, that the smoke coming off of the nuclear bombs going off would cool the Earth's temperature by 15 degrees or whatever. I've heard all that stuff. And I don't completely buy into it. Not 100%. First off, I think it was more true back during the Cold War era when they had way more nuclear weapons than they do now. And no defense to stop, not much defense to stop them from hitting. Look, we just had these fires up here in Canada here that blocked the sun out. I mean, New York City, they were in the dark. They were just dark orange colored from the fires up here. Released a tremendous amount of burn. Probably the equivalent of what would happen if a nuclear strike on America. Probably wouldn't release a whole lot more smoke than that. And I don't see the world freezing right now. Same thing happened a couple years ago in Australia. They had massive fires. It could be seen from space easily and stuff from the amount of smoke. Even these big volcanoes that blow off only reduce the world's temperature ever so slightly. And so, I mean, maybe most of that is if the world had like 100,000 nuclear weapons. Maybe then. And they all blew up at the same time. Maybe we would have a nuclear winter. But the world now has been reduced down to under 12,000. And the thing is if they all blew up, maybe only half of them or less than half of them would blow up. So maybe we're down to like how many would blow up in a dual exchange might only be 3,000 of them. And that's probably not enough to trigger a nuclear winter. Maybe, I'm just saying, maybe not enough. Maybe not enough to trigger a nuclear winter is my thoughts. I mean, we can't know for sure because it hasn't happened. But all I'm saying is don't count 100% on the nuclear winter happening. And as far as radiation is concerned, well, 90% of the radiation's gone in the first few days. It's got a very short half-life. So all I'm saying, guys, is even though it looks dire heading toward a nuclear thing, how would it affect you? What would it be like for you? You picture all these scenes of the movie The Day After or whatever, and all these bombs going off, and you see mushroom cloud over there, another one over there, and everybody says, okay, we might as well throw in the towel, we're done. Even though we didn't get hit by the bomb directly, I mean, it was just, there's one there, we're done. Might not be that way at all. In fact, so few might drop that your area, you might not see any. And there might not be any difference. The sun might be up in the sky and everything. Everything's quiet. Because the bomb might be 200 or 300 miles away. And from that distance, you wouldn't even see it. Maybe a little tiny trail of smoke across the sky, but that's all. But what you would see, definitely 100% sure about this, what you would see is your phone would go dead and your power would go out. Bonk. Because where that bomb dropped would negatively affect the grid around that area, and because that would be a grid brownout or burnout in that area, it would affect the rest of the grid hundreds of miles away. So your grid would probably be down. But other than that, you might not even know nothing's going on. Everything just goes dead all of a sudden. Maybe you get a little warning on your phone. A little thing comes on and says, your phone goes, and you look at it and you say, nuclear weapon on the incoming or whatever. And you're like, oh my gosh, you know. It'd be the same situation that Jim Carrey went through when I think he was in Hawaii or whatever, and they got this nuclear warning signal and every, you know. You might get that. Maybe not. And so you might know what knocked the power out, and maybe you won't. It might be a long time until the power comes back on again. You know? And the places that get hit might never get power restored again. So now you know my logic. Because I've talked about this in my shows for quite a few times. I've talked about how there's going to be areas that the grid goes down, stays down. These areas I call them the wastelands or badlands. And these are probably areas that have residual radiation left over around a small area around ground zero. Because the radiation lasts longer if you get right in on ground zero. You know? Maybe a mile, within a mile of ground zero. And they blow them up just slightly in the air, you know, to make maximum effect. They have what's called MRVs, multiple re-entry vehicles. Multiple something re-entry vehicles are called. And what happens is as the thing's coming in through the Earth's atmosphere, on its way in, the ICBM, it separates off. The warhead opens up, and it reveals the individual nukes. And they go off and they hit several different targets. And they blow up above the ground. And most of them are in the range of probably, they're like 200-300 kilotons. Yeah, I know they had megaton-sized weapons in the past, you know, that they blew up, but most of the weapons are under 1 megaton. And so, yeah, they're very effective. Yeah, if you're any closer than 2 miles to it when it goes off, you're pretty much in big trouble. If you're more than 2 miles away from ground zero, you need to be probably at least 2 miles away from ground zero. 10 miles out, your survivability would be very, very good. Especially if you were able to avoid the infrared radiation that comes off initially for about the first 5 or 6 seconds. That doesn't burn your skin. And this old thing applies, you know, that they learned them in the schools. Duck and cover. Yeah, because first off, when you see the flash, don't look toward it. You'll blind yourself or be partially blinded. And if you're about 10 miles away, you know, and you duck and cover and stuff like that, it's very survivable. I mean, probably 40 seconds later, you can count 1,000 Mississippi, 2,000 Mississippi, 3,000 Mississippi before the shock wave hits you. If you're like 10 miles away. Probably about 40 seconds, you know. And then it makes a loud crack sound. Kind of like a shot from a bang, a loud bang. That's all you hear is a loud bang if you're about 10 miles away. And then that's it. Then you see the mushroom cloud over there about 10. If it's not shrouded in clouds and stuff, it's not a cloudy day, and then you wouldn't see nothing. And that's if you're within 10 miles of it. If you're like 100 miles away, you're not going to notice hardly anything. And, you know, I mean, how many of them would get through? Maybe not as many as you think. I mean, okay, we're talking about something that's absolutely devastating to humanity. But my whole focus on this is unsurvivable? No, I don't think so. I think people would survive. But for how long? This is the question. Because it would affect us in negative ways. We've already been impacted in very negative ways already. Our populations are going to start to go into decline already. I would almost declare us at this point right now, if you look into the future 50 or 100 years from now, an endangered species. Birth rates are dropping like crazy. Fertility is just like it's going away. We're becoming infertile because of all of the things that are in our environment that are just destroying our fertility. And so what's going to happen is we're going to see we've reached a peak in population, I think, and we're going to see a massive decline coming up. But a nuclear war would just make that 10 times worse. You know? And that may be where we're headed. So preparation, you know, is key. If you're living out in a rural area, Say you have to drive an hour to get to the local grocery store. Say you're that rural, you're very lucky. If your nearest neighbors are a quarter-mile away, you're very lucky. Think of it that way. If you've got food supplies put away for yourself, you're very lucky. If you got water put away or if you got a well or something like that, you're very lucky. You're in a situation where you could survive something like this and live on for another 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, there was one fella, this is a true story, he survived the nuclear of Hiroshima. I think they had him locked away in a prison or something, and he was at ground zero, and the thing blew up or whatever, and he survived it. He lived on for a lot of people survived it and lived on to live out their lives, full lives. And all the point I'm trying to do is just over the past few minutes is say it's not the end of the world if it happens. You know, it seems like the West and the East now are caught and embroiled in a situation that's not going away, and it's ultimately headed toward a world war. And I mean, I'm just being a realist, guys. I'm just being a realist. This is like a slow brew heading toward the ultimate conclusion, which would be a world war. What we're embroiled in. And the financial system going down the drain is not any big help to this whole situation. So now is the time to prepare. Not just for a financial crisis. We haven't got just one thing coming at us. We got multiple things coming at us. Now is the time, absolutely, do not get behind on your preparedness. Anyway, I'm talking quite a little while about this. I'm going to move on. Taking a look at silver price today. Why is this service unavailable? We're looking at 84 cents up in one day. That is a big day for silver. 23, almost $24. 84-cent day. That's a big day. Up for silver. That's a big day. One of the biggest days we've had in a long time. How's gold doing today? Gold is up $22.80 at $19.55. Taking a look at cryptocurrency today, and Bitcoin is trending up right now too. It's at 30,574, and Ethereum is 1886. XRP is 47.1 cents. The Dow Jones Industrial Average today, it's up 204 points. I just refreshed the page. 207 right now at 34,469. Taking a look at crude oil, is at 75.53. It's up 70 cents on the day. Crude oil's been going up lately. It hung around $70 for a long time, and now it's starting to take off. It's over 75 and heading toward 80. Bonds and rates today, we're looking at this 10-year at 3.85. It's down 12 basis points. And the U.S. 30-year is down 6.3 basis points at 3.9. Taking a look at U.S. dollar index, and the dollar's just keeping its head above 100. It's going down today. It's at 100.62, and it's down 1.11. So it's down over 1% down today. And that's the reason probably why gold and silver's up. Dollar down, gold and silver goes up. Thank you guys for listening to my show. I mean, don't be depressed about the idea of nuclear war. I just give you one more little example. When I used to live down in Florida, one year we had this massive hurricane heading toward us. And for like a week, it was slowly trudging toward Florida. Can't remember. I think it was called Isabel or something like that. Anyway, it was slowly trudging toward Florida, this massive hurricane. Very powerful and everything. And they were telling us, oh, it's going to destroy everything. It's going to be a terrible storm and everything. Board over your windows and warning us all this time while it kept heading toward us. So finally the day come and it hit. And I was waiting for all these winds that were going to bend the trees down and it would be scary and all. Nothing. It kind of fizzled itself out as it hit land. And there's just a few balmy breezes come off of it is all. Nothing. The trees weren't bending or nothing. A little bit of rain. It was nothing. It was a nothing burger. And you know, I'm going to tell you, a nuclear war could turn out to be sort of, after all this time they've been telling us, oh, it's the end of the world and everything else. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a nothing burger, but it might not be a total end of the world event at all. It might be more like a, I'm not going to say it's going to be a party or anything like that. I do believe that there would be a grid down situation. I do believe that, and I do believe that there probably would be some cities destroyed and stuff like that. You know, and there probably would be some radiation areas and stuff like that. And there would be a lot of people that would be the end for them. Perhaps millions. But it might not be the end of the world, is what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It might blow over like everything else does. And it certainly probably would be the end of all of the threat of nuclear war. That would probably do it. They would probably at that point they would probably say, hey, you know, after it's over, they'd probably say, hey, you know, and there'd probably be a long time of peace that would occur after that, I would imagine. I mean, I'm just speculating, you know. Maybe I'm looking on the bright side. I just don't know. But I do know you have to start to think that way, because they're moving into a situation now where it's going to be more and more bristling of the nuclear powers, more and more rattling of the sabers, more and more fear-mongering amongst the nations, and people becoming more and more distressed and more fearful all the time of this, and a lot of people just giving up because they think they're going to, when the real fear hits, and say they start to use some of these tactical nuclear weapons, even start to use them, you can imagine the fear that's going to go around the world when that starts to happen. And that could possibly be something that would happen pre-strategic nukes being used. Like in advance of strategic nukes being used. And imagine how many people would just be in utter fear and total fear that, well, as long as there's life, there's hope. And so my point is don't think to yourself, hey, if the worst happens, we're done, we're toast, we're dead. No, you're not. You're not dead till you're dead. And life is worth fighting for. Especially against these maniacs out there who take us down this road that we never wanted to go down. Thank you guys for tuning into my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. And have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.